Throughout the lifetime of the Switch, one of the most common phrases for the system has been, "Put it on the Switch." Having so many games available on the go is still novel and exciting, but perhaps one of the best examples of having games on the Switch are all the collections. It feels like more than any other generation, collections are a go-to way for publishers to release old games in the hope of garnering new fans. And with so many of these games being retro classics, playing them on the Switch just makes them all the more enticing. So I thought I'd count down what I think are the 21 best collections on the Switch. Though it should be said that hardly any of these collections are exclusive to the console. While this is no means an objective list, I have stuck to the idea that in order to be considered, the collection must have at least 3 games. Despite loving compilations like Klonoa Fantasy Reverie Series and the Portal Companion Collection, it's hard to consider those true collections when others offer 10 or more games at a time. I'll also be considering bonus materials, quality of life improvements, and generally just how fun the games are. So, who's ready to bundle up? There's little doubt that the Atelier Ryza games have thrust the Atelier series to heights it has never seen before in its 25+ year history, and because of that, Koei Tecmo wasted no time in getting more Atelier games out there. It's a renaissance perfectly fitting the rise of the cozy gamer. Because sometimes you just want to chill rather than save the world, and the Atelier games accomplish that. There are 3 trilogies available on the Switch, so it's all a matter of taste, but the most recent is the Atelier Mysterious Trilogy Deluxe Pack, which boasts additional features, new costumes, a photo mode, quality of life improvements, and all the previous DLC. Getting either Crash or Spyro back in the modern era was something to celebrate because while both series had their ups and downs, there was no doubt that their first 3 entries are undeniably their best. So to have them both remade from the ground up with new voice acting and some modern conveniences was a dream to fans. Plus, it allowed new players the chance to see why we love them so much. Either collection is great, but I personally love Spyro just a little more. After all, it was my first 3D platformer. To see the Ace Attorney series go from this rather obscure title to one of the most beloved characters in gaming has been a treat, and Capcom has not been shy about packaging the first 3 games together for anyone to enjoy in the Phoenix Wright trilogy. While there's not exactly much in the way of new content here, it's hard to deny that each game is fun in its own right, not to mention that there is a story arc across the trilogy. These aren't just separate adventures. I should mention though that as a collection, the Apollo Justice trilogy is looking even better because while the games may not be as beloved as the original trilogy, the bonus features are looking fantastic. I'm a sucker for collections filled with tons of different games, especially if they've never been released in the West before, and that certainly sums up the Double Dragon and Kunio-kun Retro Brawler bundle, as 11 of the 18 available games have never been localized. And for the Retro Brawler bundle, each one has been fully localized, along with including the original versions of the games that were localized in the West, as Kunio-kun has often been branded far differently. And despite most knowing River City Ransom and Double Dragon as beat-em-ups, there are a ton of sports games here featuring Kunio. This is a great collection if you want to discover more of a character often forgotten in the West. But if beat-em-ups are your thing, then there's no better collection than the Capcom Beat-em-up bundle. 7 of the company's classic arcade games compiled into one collection with online play available for each one. Even cooler is that 2 of the games, Armored Warriors and Battle Circuit, never saw a console release before, and Battle Circuit never came to American arcades. Add in the usual extras like highly customizable settings and production artwork, and yeah, it's a pretty great collection. Shovel Knight may have been overexposed in the indie space over the years, but there's no denying his importance. The Treasure Trove collection shows exactly why he became a phenomenon. While the campaigns featuring Plague Knight, Spectre Knight, and King Knight were ostensibly supposed to be DLC, they're pretty much games in their own right, expanding the story and lore while drastically changing how they played. It may have been mostly the same levels that were featured in Shovel Knight's debut, but they're reused so smartly that it never feels like a retread. Plus, there's even Shovel Knight Showdown, a fighting game featuring all of the characters. It's a hell of a package for any retro-inspired platformer fan. By all accounts, Super Mario 3D All-Stars should be higher on this list, but unlike a lot of the other games, Nintendo didn't really go all out in terms of extras. It's 3 games available on Switch, and that's it. But when the 3 games are Super Mario 64, the first port of Super Mario Sunshine, and Super Mario Galaxy, it's hard to complain too much. It really should have some kind of extra though. So many collections add design documents, extra features, and much, much more. 3D All-Stars didn't even include Super Mario Galaxy 2 and was made a limited release. This could have been one of the greats, but as it stands, it's pretty good. Sonic Origins Plus is a collection that got better with age. Despite a rocky start, things have improved for the game both in terms of how it runs and its content. Collecting Sonic 1 through 3 and CD, and allowing Sonic, Tails, Knuckles, and Amy to be playable in all 4 games with a host of new animated cutscenes, plus extra challenges and bonuses, there's a lot here. The 12 Game Gear games are fine as an inclusion, and sadly we'll just have to deal with Sonic 3's replacement music, but the classics on offer and their myriad changes are a fun time. While it may not be the best option for hardcore fighting game fans, there's no doubt that the Street Fighter 30th anniversary is fantastic for casual fans. Not only does it provide every Street Fighter from the rough original to the seminal Third Strike, and every variation between, but a ton of character art, history, and a breakdown of what each game brought to the table. Online is available for a selection of the games, but what makes it tricky to recommend for hardcore fans is that every version is based on that arcade original, and for many, those aren't the best versions of those games. Still, it's a great choice for those curious about the series' evolution. Contra may be tough as nails, but there's a reason it's endured for as long as it has. It's fun as hell. The Contra Anniversary Collection brings together 2 arcade games, 4 console games, and even a Game Boy title with their Japanese and European counterparts. There's not a bad game in the bunch, but you will be facing some fierce challenges. However, like Konami's other anniversary collections, the digital bonus book is filled with great insight into the making of these games. While it doesn't get the same love as Street Fighter or even the King of Fighters, SNK's Samurai Showdown has been a staple of the 2D fighting scene. And thanks to Digital Eclipse, all 5 of the Neo Geo entries are available in one collection thanks to the, well, Samurai Showdown Neo Geo collection. Naturally. Samurai Showdown 1 through 5 are all available along with the expanded 5 Special and the first ever release of the even more expanded 5 Perfect. It's a loving bundle for a series that certainly has its fans, especially when you consider the museum with over 2,000 images and complete soundtracks for every game. There is online for each game, but even at launch it didn't exactly have a thriving community. Still, if you're looking for a non-Capcom fighting game to try out, this weapons-based fighter is a great place to start. However, if you are looking for Capcom fighting games to try out, just not of the Street Fighter variety, then the Capcom Fighting Collection is a fantastic choice. Every game is a port of their arcade original and consists of 5 different Darkstalkers games, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, Super Gem Fighter Mini Mix, Cyberbots, Red Earth, and Hyper Street Fighter 2, a version that allowed players to choose any variation of Street Fighter 2 characters from across all their appearances. Every game features online play with rollback netcode, and it's a great mix for those looking for something different in their fighting games. Naturally, there's a museum filled with artwork and design documents, making for a fine collection of lesser-known fighters. The Etrian Odyssey Origins collection is certainly pricier than many other collections, but they are packed with dozens of hours of gameplay each that hit just right for fans of dungeon crawler RPGs. While they may not be the most extravagant in terms of story, the loop of diving into a dungeon, mapping it out as you go along, finding as much loot as you can before resources run out, then returning to base to better equip yourself and take advantage of your higher levels is quite satisfying. Add in the remastered graphics and sound along with quality of life features like an auto map, and it's a great way to dive into these classic dungeon RPGs. It's more a question of price. I love classic Castlevania, the simplicity of its goals, the music, the way it evolves and changes, so it should be no surprise that the Anniversary Collection is here as it's a fantastic way to play the early years of the seminal action platformers. These range from the classics that are Castlevania 1, 3, and 4, to obscure titles that are every bit as good, Bloodlines and Belmont's Revenge for the Game Boy. Even the NES version of Kid Dracula was localized for the first time, and while some despise Castlevania 2, I have a soft spot for it as it's perfectly fine when using a guide. No, what I hate is Castlevania the Adventure. It's a blemish on this collection and barely worth playing, but that shouldn't take away from the collection as a whole, including its fantastic bonus digital book with artwork and planning notes from across all the games. There's some missing Classicvanias from the collection to be sure, but it's a fine place to start for the curious. There's nothing quite like Danganronpa. Its style immediately marks it as unique with some of the wildest characters around, and yet by immersing yourself in this world and strange concepts, you find yourself drawn in and curious about what mysteries it has to reveal. Many compare it to Ace Attorney thanks to the need to find a murderer amongst the group, but the way this is handled is decidedly different. The Decadence collection brings together Danganronpa 1, 2, and V3, along with an expanded minigame from V3, Ultimate Summer Camp. It brings the entire story into one neat package, except for the spin-off interquel Ultra Despair Girls. There aren't really any other bonuses though, and reactions to Ultimate Summer Camp are divided at best, but the core 3 games are well worth playing. If I were to individually list all of the Mega Man Legacy collections, they would take up most of this list, so instead I'm putting them all together as they feature every core game amongst the Classic, X, Zero, ZX, and Battle Network series. That is incredible for any fan of the franchise, and a great way for newcomers to see what makes them so special. It's gotten to the point where fans are hoping for more collections as they are just that convenient. Obviously there are side games missing, but they're still standout examples, especially with bonus modes like X's X Challenge and Zero's Z Chaser. Quality of life improvements are available as well, making them more accessible to new players. Every one of them is a great choice, though obviously some games are better than others. But as a collective, they're some of the greats. Collection of Mana feels special. Even though it only features 3 games, all 3 of them are some of the best on their respective systems. Final Fantasy Adventure stands the test of time by being extremely accessible and, in my personal opinion, better than Link's Awakening in many ways. Secret of Mana is a classic and the reason so many people know the Mana series to begin with. And then there's Trials of Mana, never before released in the West before this collection, yet living up to the lofty words of importers who did play it. Even better is that it offers a way to play the original despite a remake also releasing around the same time. There's not a lot in terms of extras, but what's available here more than makes up for it. The Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Collection is perhaps the best way to play classic Final Fantasies in the modern era. While they lack the extras of previous re-releases, the core games are still more than fun with some of the best RPGs of all time included in the package. Add in the remastered soundtracks by Nobuo Uematsu himself, and it's an easy recommendation, even if the font never was perfectly fixed. There's not much in terms of extras beyond that, and the package itself is certainly pricey, but it stands out as a must-have for RPG fans. Like I said, I love Castlevania, and the Advance collection is filled with classics that took the search action direction of Symphony of the Night and ran with it. Circle of the Moon and Harmony of Dissonance are both finding their footing while still being good games, but it's Aria of Sorrow that's the standout. It's worth buying the collection for that game alone. There's even a bonus game in the form of Dracula X, a lesser SNES port of Rondo of Blood. The game is fine, but brutal at points, making the rewind function a saving grace for those not willing to put up with its trials. Artwork is included once again, making it another great choice for those wanting to get into the series. Of course, if there was a Castlevania DS collection, that would handily take this bundle's place, as those games are some of the best in the series, hands down. Still, I would easily recommend trying any of the games in this collection. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Cowabunga collection is a masterclass in the collection genre, bringing together 13 Turtles games across the arcade, console, and even handheld. While not every game is a classic, there are sure to be a few favorites here. But where it truly stands out is in the sheer list of options, as every single game has toggles to make each as true to the original release as possible, or updated with improvements and tweaks to change the experience. Even beyond that, the collection is filled with artwork across all TMNT media, from the cartoons to the comics, design documents, the original manuals, and even specialized guides to better help players now. It's fantastic for any Turtles fan and a demonstration of what collections could bring to the table. Digital Eclipse may have done an amazing job for Turtles, but their development of Atari 50, the anniversary celebration, is without a doubt a masterpiece. Say what you will about the Atari and its various games, the way this is all packaged together is incredible. While there is a list of the 103 games, yes, 103 across the arcade, the Atari 2600, the 8-bit, the 5200, the 7800, the Lynx, the Jaguar, and even new games and unreleased prototypes, that loses a lot of what makes this collection special. The games can be viewed in a timeline that combines design documents, manuals, context for the time, and video interviews with former Atari employees and developer legends. It's a full-blown history lesson in the medium. The games may be dated by today's standards, but as an example of game preservation, it's unmatched. 21 collection examples may seem like a lot, but it's barely scratching the surface of what's out there, especially if you expand beyond my rule of 3. Grandia, Portal, Mighty Switch Force, the SNK 40th, and Neo Geo Pocket Color collections all offer a way to play classics from the past, both recent and retro. I counted well over 50 in my research for this list, and there are more on the way like Metal Gear Solid, Double Dragon, and the aforementioned Apollo Justice trilogy. So please, let me know what you think represents the best on the Switch. We may as well bloat our backlogs further as we look into the past. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting our Patreon at patreon.com/gvgaming, or simply subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. Every bit helps and we couldn't be more appreciative. Thank you for watching, and be on the lookout for more fun videos in the future. Until next time, bye!